Imagine standing in front of a mirror looking at your reflection and feeling like a fraud. Not because you are lying to people, but because the face you show the world isn't really yours. Now imagine that feeling is worth $1.2 billion. That is not a typo, that is a billion. This is the story of a woman who was told to her face that she was too heavy, too red, and too imperfect to ever succeed in the beauty industry. A woman who took a rejection that would have crushed 99% of the population and turned it into the largest acquisition in L'Oreal's history. This isn't just a story about makeup, it is a story about the moment you decide that the world is wrong and you are right. Let's rewind to the beginning. Jamie Kern Lima was not born into a beauty dynasty. She wasn't a chemist. She wasn't a CEO. She was a waitress at Denny's to put herself through college. Eventually, she landed her dream job as a television news anchor. It sounds glamorous, right? The lights, the camera, the makeup chair. But for Jamie, the dream quickly turned into a daily nightmare. She developed a skin condition called hereditary rosacea. If you don't know what that is, imagine your cheeks constantly flushing bright red, angry and inflamed. Now imagine trying to read the news in high definition while hot studio lights are melting the foundation off your face. Every commercial break, she was scrubbing and reapplying, praying the redness wouldn't break through. She was spending her entire paycheck on expensive products that claimed to cover it up, but they either looked like a thick mask or they just didn't work. She felt trapped. She felt like she was hiding a secret that was slowly eating away at her confidence. And here is where the ordinary person stops. The ordinary person accepts the struggle, they buy the concealer, they hide the redness, and they move on. But Jamie had a thought that would eventually change her entire financial destiny. She realized that if she was struggling with this, millions of other women probably were too. She didn't want makeup that made her look like a supermodel. She wanted makeup that made her look like herself, just with better skin. She realized the beauty industry was selling a fantasy that didn't exist for real women. So on her honeymoon, she and her husband Paolo made a decision that sounds insane in retrospect. They decided to quit their jobs. They took their life savings, every single penny, and decided to launch a makeup line from their living room. They called it IT Cosmetics. Innovative technology. They worked with plastic surgeons and dermatologists to create a formula that actually healed the skin while covering the redness. It was perfect. The product was a miracle. And naturally, they thought the world would immediately see that. They were wrong. This is the part of the story where most people go bankrupt. For 3 long years, Jamie heard the word no more times than you can count. She sent samples to every major retailer. Sephora said no. Ulta said no. QVC said no. Department stores said no. They were burning through cash. They had no income. They were down to their last few $1,000s. The website was getting maybe 2 or 3 orders a day, and usually those orders were from friends or family trying to be supportive. But the darkest moment came during a meeting with a potential investor. This is the moment that defines this entire story. Jamie was seeking funding to keep the company alive. She was in a boardroom with a private equity investor, a man who had made millions picking winners. He looked at her product, he looked at her sales pitch, and then he looked at her. And he said something that still echoes in the ears of every entrepreneur who has ever been doubted. He said, "I'm not going to invest." Jamie asked him why. Was it the valuation? Was it the product? He looked her in the eye and said, "I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you." Let that sink in. He wasn't criticizing the business model. He was criticizing her weight, her body, her face. He was telling her that because she didn't look like the airbrushed models in the magazines, she was worthless as a founder. Jamie went to her car and cried. She cried until she couldn't breathe. It was the kind of rejection that attacks your soul. But then something shifted. A fire ignited in her gut. She realized that he wasn't just rejecting her, he was rejecting every woman who looked like her. He was betting against every woman who had ever felt not enough. And Jamie decided, right there in that parking lot, that she was going to prove him wrong. Not just for her bank account, but for every woman who had ever been told she wasn't the right look. She went back to work with a vengeance. And then the call came. A buyer at QVC had finally agreed to give them a shot, but it wasn't a guarantee. It was a 10-minute slot on live television. And there was a catch. They had to sell a specific amount of inventory, thousands of units, in those 10 minutes. If they didn't hit the target, they would never be invited back, and they would be stuck with the inventory they had just spent their last remaining credit on. This was it, the Hail Mary, the do-or-die moment. Jamie flew to the studio. The experts at QVC told her exactly what to do. They said, use the models with perfect skin, show the smooth finish, don't show the rosacea, it's too gross, it turns people off. Everyone from the producers to her own advisors told her to play it safe. But standing backstage, watching the clock count down, Jamie felt that same feeling she had in the news anchor chair, the feeling of being a fraud. She knew that if she went out there and used a perfect model, she was just like every other brand that had rejected her. She looked at her husband and said, I can't do it their way, I have to do it my way. If I lose, at least I lose being me. The camera light turned red. She was live. Millions of people were watching. Jamie started talking about the product, but the sales graph wasn't moving. It was flatlining. The producer was in her ear, counting down the minutes. 7 minutes left, 6 minutes left. Nothing was happening. She was about to lose everything. And then, with shaking hands, she did something that had never been done on live beauty television before. She took a makeup wipe and she scrubbed her cheek hard. She wiped away the coverage and revealed her bright red, inflamed rosacea to the entire world. She looked into the lens, vulnerable and exposed, and said, I'm not a model. I'm a real woman with real skin issues, and if this works for me, it will work for you. Or, in the control room, the producers gasped, but on the screen, something miraculous happened. The sold counter began to tick up, then it started to spin, then it started to fly. The phone lines at QVC lit up like a Christmas tree. Women across America weren't turning away in disgust. They were leaning in. They were seeing themselves. They were seeing the truth for the first time in an industry built on lies. The inventory sold out before the 10 minutes were even up. The host was stunned. Jamie stood there, half her face red, half her face perfect, and cried tears of joy. In 10 minutes, she had saved her company. But that was just the spark. The explosion was yet to come. That single moment of authenticity turned IT Cosmetics into a juggernaut. They weren't just selling concealer, they were selling confidence. They were selling the idea that you are beautiful just the way you are. The company grew by thousands of percentages. They expanded into every major retailer that had previously said no. Sephora came knocking. Ulta came begging. And remember that investor? The one who said no one would buy from someone who looked like her. He later sent Jamie an email saying it was the biggest mistake of his entire career, a mistake that cost him hundreds of millions of dollars. Fast forward a few years, L'Oreal, the biggest beauty company on the planet, was watching. They saw something they couldn't replicate. They saw a community of women who were fiercely loyal to Jamie. In 2016, the news broke. L'Oreal acquired IT Cosmetics for $1.2 billion in cash. Jamie Kern Lima went from a waitress at Denny's to the first female CEO of a L'Oreal brand in their 100-year history. She pocketed hundreds of millions of dollars personally. So where is she now? She isn't just sitting on a yacht sipping champagne, though she certainly could. She is an active investor, a philanthropist, and an author. She uses her wealth to empower other female entrepreneurs, but her lifestyle has changed in one very specific way. She no longer walks into a room wondering if she belongs. She walks in knowing she bought the building. What can we learn from Jamie? How can you replicate this? You might not have a makeup formula, but you have something else. You have your own rosacea. You have something you are insecure about, something you are hiding. Jamie's strategy teaches us that your biggest struggle is often your biggest opportunity. The thing you are most ashamed of might be the very thing that connects you to millions of other people. Authenticity is the new currency. In a digital age where everything is filtered and fake, being real is the ultimate disruption. And here is the secret regarding the money. Jamie didn't chase the $1 billion. She chased the solution. She chased the mission. The money was simply the byproduct of solving a painful problem for a lot of people. If you are sitting there with an idea, but you are afraid you don't look the part, or you don't have the right degree, or you don't have the connections, remember Jamie in that parking lot. Remember the man who told her no. And remember that his no didn't stop the future, it just meant he wasn't part of it. You are one decision away from a completely different life. You don't need the world's permission. You just need the courage to wipe off the mask and show the world who you really are. Because the world is waiting to buy what you have to sell, but only if you are brave enough to sell it your way.